the sunrise purification ritual. As the first rays of dawn break over the Nile, a question lingers in the desert air. Did ancient Egyptian mummy makers begin their grim work with a ritual so sacred it could bridge life and death? Step into the shadows of 2500 BCE, where the scent of natron dust and myrrh fills the air. Torches flicker in the dim workshops of Memphis, their glow dancing on sandstone walls. Here, along the river's edge, embalmers, revered yet feared, start their day not with tools, but with prayers, preparing to guide souls into eternity. What did these mummy makers do at sunrise? Egyptologists tell us the embalmers, often priests, began with a purification ritual, a sacred act to honor the gods and cleanse their bodies and minds. Before touching the dead, they bathed in Nile water, donned linen robes, and chanted hymns to Anubis, the jackal-headed god of mummification. This wasn't just hygiene, it was spiritual alignment, ensuring their hands were pure enough to craft a vessel for the afterlife. Natron, a salt revered for its drying power, was sprinkled as an offering, its gritty texture a reminder of the desert's eternal embrace. These rituals, detailed in texts like the Book of the Dead, were as precise as the embalming process itself, binding the embalmers to a cosmic order. But the mainstream view leaves shadows of doubt. Why were these rituals so elaborate, sometimes lasting hours? Some mummies show traces of rare resins, like cedar oil, not mentioned in standard texts. Could the purification have included secret preparations we don't fully understand? The precision of their work suggests a knowledge of chemistry and anatomy that seems almost too advanced for their time. Were these dawn prayers hiding a deeper purpose, perhaps a lost technique or a guarded recipe passed down through generations? Consider the alternatives. Traditional scholars argue the rituals were purely religious, aligning the embalmers with divine will. But fringe theories push further. Some claim the prayers invoked cosmic energies, aligning the body with celestial cycles for a journey beyond Earth. Others speculate the embalmers used psychoactive herbs during purification, entering trances to commune with the dead. While these ideas stretch belief, recent finds at Saqqara, like a 2023 workshop discovery revealing complex resin mixtures, hint at knowledge we're only beginning to grasp. Were these rituals a blend of science and mysticism, or something stranger still? As the sun climbs higher, the embalmers' chants fade, and their tools gleam in the light, ready for the day's work. Were these sunrise rituals merely a prelude to preserving flesh, or did they unlock a deeper secret about the soul's journey? Perhaps the answer lies in the next mystery, waiting to be uncovered in the sands of time. 2. Preparing the sacred tools. Imagine standing in an ancient Egyptian workshop as the sun climbs over the Nile, a chilling question hanging in the air. How did mummy makers craft tools so precise they could preserve a body for millennia? In the flickering torchlight of 2000 BCE, the scent of molten resin and dry natron swirls through a sandstone chamber. On wooden tables, embalmers move with purpose, their hands steady as they prepare a toolkit that feels almost otherworldly, a blend of craftsmanship, ritual, and mystery. What occupied these embalmers' mornings? Egyptologists say preparing tools was a meticulous task, as vital as the mummification itself. Obsidian blades, sharper than modern scalpels, were chipped and honed to slice flesh with surgical precision. Natron, the desert's sacred salt, was measured in clay jars, ready to draw moisture from the dead. Resins like myrrh and frankincense were heated over charcoal, their smoky aroma filling the air, destined to seal and sanctify the body. Papyrus scrolls, inscribed with spells from the Book of the Dead, lay nearby, guiding every step. These tools weren't just practical. They were sacred, blessed in rituals to Anubis, ensuring the deceased's safe passage to the afterlife. Yet, cracks appear in this tidy explanation. How did embalmers, without modern metallurgy, craft obsidian blades fine enough to rival today's surgical tools? Some mummies reveal incisions so precise they suggest an anatomical knowledge we can't fully explain. And why do certain resins, found in 2022 Saqqara excavations, contain complex compounds hinting at advanced chemistry? The mainstream view, ritualistic tool preparation, doesn't account for these anomalies, leaving us to wonder if key techniques remain buried in the sands. Alternative ideas spark intrigue. Scholars propose embalmers used lost recipes, blending herbs and minerals in ways we've yet to replicate. Fringe theories go bolder. Could the tools have been energized through esoteric rituals, aligning them with cosmic forces? Some even whisper of extraterrestrial knowledge, pointing to the uncanny precision of the craft. While these stretch credulity, the Saqqara finds, showing imported cedar resins from thousands of miles away, suggest a sophistication that challenges our assumptions. Were these tools merely instruments or keys to a deeper science? As the embalmers set their blades and resins in perfect order, the workshop hums with anticipation, ready for the sacred work ahead. Were they simply sharpening tools, or unlocking secrets of eternity we're still chasing? The next mystery in this ancient craft beckons, hidden just beyond the torchlight. 3. Receiving the deceased. As the sun burns over the Nile, a haunting question echoes through time. What did ancient Egyptian mummy makers feel when a body arrived at their workshop, still warm with the fading breath of life? In 2500 BCE, the air hums with solemnity outside a Memphis embalming tent. The scent of incense mingles with the river's damp earth. A procession approaches, mourners chanting, priests murmuring prayers, delivering the deceased to hands that will prepare them for eternity. What did embalmers do when a body arrived? Egyptologists paint a vivid picture. The process began with reverence, not haste. The body was laid on a wooden table, cleansed with Nile water and anointed with oils. Priests recorded details, name, status, cause of death, on papyrus, ensuring the soul's identity endured. A prayer to Osiris, god of the underworld, invoked protection, while amulets were placed to ward off evil. This wasn't mere logistics. It was a sacred transition, preparing the body as a vessel for the afterlife. The embalmers, often priests themselves, balanced practicality with ritual, their work rooted in the belief that a preserved body anchored the soul forever. But this explanation harbors shadows. Why do some mummies show signs of pre-embalming treatments, like rare salves, not mentioned in ancient texts? The precision of these initial steps, revealed in 2023 Saqqara finds, suggests a deeper knowledge of preservation than we credit. And why were some bodies documented with cryptic symbols, hinting at rituals we can't decode? The mainstream view, a straightforward intake process, feels incomplete, as if pieces of this sacred puzzle are still lost. Alternative theories ignite curiosity. Traditional scholars suggest embalmers used herbal concoctions, now forgotten, to slow decay from the start. Fringe ideas push further. Could these initial rites have tapped into cosmic energies, aligning the soul with stellar pathways? Some speculate the embalmer's prayers induced trance-like states, guiding the deceased's spirit. While these border on fantasy, discoveries of exotic resins in Saqqara workshops, traded from distant lands, hint at a sophistication we're only beginning to grasp. Were these first moments purely ceremonial, or a gateway to hidden knowledge? As the embalmers close their prayers, the body lies ready, its journey to immortality begun. Were they merely receiving the dead, or weaving a deeper spell to defy time itself? The next chapter of their craft waits, whispering secrets from the sands. 4. The removal of organs. As twilight falls over ancient Egypt, a question cuts through the desert silence. How did mummy makers transform a lifeless body into a vessel for eternity with such chilling precision? In a torchlit workshop along the Nile, circa 2000 BCE, the air is thick with the scent of natron and myrrh. On a stone slab, embalmers wield obsidian blades, their hands steady as they begin one of mummification's most sacred acts, removing the internal organs, a ritual as delicate as it is profound. What did this process entail? Egyptologists explain it was both practical and spiritual. Using a flint knife, embalmers made a precise incision along the abdomen to remove the stomach, intestines, lungs, and liver. Each organ was cleansed, dried with natron, and placed in canopic jars, guarded by deities like Imseti and Hapi. The heart, believed to house the soul, was left intact, ready for judgment in the afterlife. This 70-day process, described in ancient texts, was not just about preservation, but ensuring the soul's journey to Osiris. Embalmers worked with reverence, their tools blessed, their chants echoing to align the body with divine order. Yet, this narrative raises unsettling questions. How did embalmers achieve such surgical precision without modern tools or anatomy texts? Some mummies, like those studied in 2024 at Saqqara, show incisions so clean they rival modern surgery. Why do certain bodies contain traces of rare preservatives, like pine resin, not listed in standard records? The mainstream view, a ritualized organ removal, leaves gaps, hinting at techniques or knowledge we haven't fully uncovered. Alternative ideas stir the imagination. Scholars suggest embalmers used lost herbal mixtures to prevent decay during organ removal, a skill honed over centuries. Fringe theories venture further. Could the process have involved esoteric rituals, channeling cosmic forces to activate the body for eternity? Some even claim the embalmer's precision points to advanced, perhaps otherworldly, knowledge. While these ideas stretch belief, recent discoveries of complex chemical residues in canopic jars suggest a sophistication that challenges our understanding. Were they merely extracting organs, or performing a deeper alchemy? As the embalmers seal the jars under the flickering torchlight, the body lies transformed, ready for its next phase. Were they simply preserving flesh, or unlocking a secret to defy death itself? The sands of Egypt hold more mysteries waiting to be revealed. 5. The Canopic Jar Ceremony. As moonlight bathes the Nile's banks, a question whispers through the ages. Did ancient Egyptian mummy makers seal more than organs in their sacred jars? Perhaps secrets of the soul itself? In a dimly lit workshop, circa 2500 BCE, the air hums with chants and the sharp scent of natron. Embalmers, their faces solemn, cradle 4 alabaster jars, each carved with the heads of the 4 sons of Horus. This is the Canopic Jar Ceremony, a ritual where preservation meets the divine and eternity feels within reach. What did this ceremony involve? Egyptologists describe a meticulous process steeped in spirituality. After removing the stomach, intestines, lungs, and liver, embalmers dried each organ with natron and anointed them with sacred oils. Each was placed in a canopic jar guarded by a deity, Imseti for the liver, Hapi for the lungs, Duamutef for the stomach, and kebesenuef for the intestines. These jars, often sealed with resin, were blessed with prayers to protect the organs for the afterlife. The ritual, rooted in texts like the Book of the Dead, ensured the deceased's body remained whole in spirit, ready to face Osiris's judgment. But shadows linger over this explanation. Why do some jars, uncovered in 2023 Saqqara digs, contain exotic preservatives like cedar resin, suggesting a chemistry far beyond simple drying? How did embalmers know which compounds preserved best, with no apparent scientific method? The mainstream view, organ storage as a religious act, feels incomplete, as if the ceremony hid techniques or purposes we've yet to unravel. Alternative theories spark wonder. Scholars propose the embalmers used lost herbal blends, tailored to each organ, hinting at an almost alchemical expertise. Fringe ideas push boundaries. Could the jars have been charged with cosmic energies, aligning the soul with celestial realms? Some even speculate the ceremony encoded esoteric knowledge, pointing to myths of extraterrestrial guidance. While these stretch credulity, chemical analyses from Saqqara reveal compounds traded across continents, suggesting a sophistication that defies our assumptions. Was this merely preservation, or something more profound? As the embalmers seal the jars, their chants fade into the night, leaving the body one step closer to immortality. Were they just guarding organs, or weaving a deeper spell to bind the soul to eternity? The next mystery of their craft beckons, hidden in the sands of time. 6. The brain extraction process. As dawn's glow creeps over the Nile, a question chills the air. How did ancient Egyptian mummy makers extract the brain with such eerie precision, and why did they treat it like a mystery to be discarded? In a torchlit workshop, circa 2000 BCE, the scent of resin and natron hangs heavy. Embalmers, their eyes focused, wield strange tools, a hooked bronze rod, a clay bowl, preparing for one of mummification's most enigmatic steps, removing the brain, a process both clinical and cloaked in mysticism. What did this delicate act entail? Egyptologists reveal a startling technique. Using a long hooked tool inserted through the nostril, embalmers pierced the cranial cavity, liquefied the brain with careful stirring, and drained it into a bowl. Unlike the heart, deemed the seat of the soul, the brain was considered unimportant, often discarded. Natron was then packed into the skull to dry it, preserving the head's shape for the afterlife. This step, detailed in Herodotus's accounts, was precise yet ritualistic, with prayers to Anubis ensuring the body's sanctity. It was a balance of science and faith, preparing the deceased for eternity. Yet, this explanation unravels at the edges. How did embalmers perfect this technique without modern anatomical knowledge? Some mummies, studied in 2024 CT scans from Saqqara, show skull interiors so cleanly emptied they suggest an almost surgical skill. Why do traces of rare resins, like myrrh, appear in some cranial cavities, hinting at undocumented preservation steps? The mainstream view, a straightforward extraction, leaves gaps, as if a deeper purpose or method remains hidden. Alternative ideas ignite curiosity. Scholars suggest embalmers used herbal solutions to liquefy tissue, a lost art of early chemistry. Fringe theories venture wilder. Could the process have been a ritual to release the soul, aligning it with cosmic forces? Some even propose the embalmer's tools, eerily precise, reflect advanced knowledge, perhaps from beyond Earth. While these strain belief, Saqqara's 2023 finds of specialized bronze tools suggest a craft more sophisticated than we realize. Was this merely a clinical step, or a mystical rite we don't yet grasp? As the embalmers wipe their tools, the body lies still, its skull now a hollow vessel for eternity. Were they just removing tissue or unlocking a secret about life and death? Another mystery of their craft awaits, buried in Egypt's timeless sands. 7. The Natron Immersion Period. As the sun scorches the Nile's banks, a question lingers in the heat. What did ancient Egyptian mummy makers do during the long, silent weeks when bodies lay entombed in Natron, transforming into vessels of eternity? In a shadowed workshop of 2500 BCE, the air is sharp with the salty tang of natron and the faint glow of oil lamps. Bodies, packed in mounds of this sacred desert salt, rest on stone slabs, while embalmers move quietly, their work a blend of patience, ritual, and mystery. What occupied these embalmers during the natron immersion? Egyptologists describe a 40-day drying phase where natron, sodium carbonate mined from dry lake beds, drew moisture from the body, halting decay. Embalmers monitored the process, turning bodies, refreshing natron, and chanting prayers to Osiris to safeguard the soul. They prepared linen wrappings and resins for the next steps, while inscribing amulets with spells from the Book of the Dead. This period, though seemingly passive, was critical, ensuring the body's preservation for the afterlife. It was a time of vigilance, steeped in reverence for the divine. But this tidy narrative frays at the edges. Why do some mummies, like those analyzed in 2024 Saqqara studies, show uneven drying, suggesting deliberate variations in technique? How did embalmers know the exact natron blends with traces of rare minerals that preserved some bodies better than others? The mainstream view, a routine drying phase, leaves questions, hinting at a craft more complex than mere waiting. Alternative theories stir intrigue. Scholars propose embalmers used secret natron recipes, perhaps mixed with herbs, to enhance preservation, a knowledge lost to time. Fringe ideas go further. Could the immersion period have included rituals to charge the body with cosmic energy, aligning it with celestial cycles? Some even speculate the embalmers' chants induced trance-like states, communing with the dead. While these stretch credulity, recent Saqqara finds of natron laced with exotic resins from distant lands suggest a sophistication we're only beginning to unravel. Was this just drying flesh, or a deeper alchemical process? As the embalmers tend their silent charges, the workshop hums with quiet purpose, the bodies inching toward immortality. Were they merely waiting, or weaving a spell to defy time itself? The next enigma of their craft beckons, hidden in the sands of Egypt. 8. Crafting the death mask. As starlight spills over the Nile, a question glimmers in the darkness. How did ancient Egyptian mummy makers craft death masks so lifelike they seem to stare into eternity? In a torchlit workshop, circa 1500 BCE, the air hums with the scent of molten resin and fresh paint. Embalmers, their hands steady, sculpt a golden mask, its glass eyes catching the flicker of flames. This is the creation of the death mask, a masterpiece blending art, ritual, and mystery. What did crafting these iconic likenesses involve? Egyptologists describe a meticulous process. Artisans molded cartonnage, a mix of linen and plaster over the deceased's face, or cast gold for elites like Tutankhamun. They painted features with vivid pigments, inlaid eyes with obsidian and quartz, and adorned the mask with spells from the Book of the Dead. These masks, placed over the mummy's head, weren't just portraits. They ensured the soul recognized its body in the afterlife. The work, guided by priests, was sacred, aligning the deceased with Osiris's eternal realm. Yet, this explanation harbors shadows. How did artisans achieve such uncanny realism without advanced tools? Some masks, studied in 2024 Luxor scans, reveal micro-details in gold layering that defy primitive metallurgy. Why do certain masks contain rare pigments, like lapis lazuli from Afghanistan, suggesting trade networks or techniques we can't fully trace? The mainstream view, artistic ritual, feels incomplete, as if a deeper craft remains veiled. Alternative theories kindle wonder. Scholars suggest embalmers used lost sculpting methods, perhaps involving precise measurements of the face. Fringe ideas push further. Could the masks have been imbued with cosmic energies, acting as spiritual conduits? Some even whisper of extraterrestrial influence, pointing to the mask's unearthly perfection. While these strain belief, recent finds in Saqqara of workshops with imported materials hint at a sophistication we're only beginning to grasp. Were these masks mere likenesses, or keys to a higher purpose? As the embalmers polish the mask, its eyes seem to gaze beyond the workshop, into the afterlife. Were they just sculpting gold, or capturing a soul's essence for eternity? Another mystery of their craft awaits, buried in Egypt's timeless sands. 9. Scribing spells on the body. As dusk settles over the Nile, a question pulses in the twilight. Did ancient Egyptian mummy makers inscribe spells on bodies to guard the soul, or to hide secrets we'll never decode? In a lamplit workshop, circa 2000 BCE, the air is thick with the scent of ink and linen. Embalmers, their hands steady, trace hieroglyphs onto strips of cloth, or, rarely, the skin itself, each symbol glowing with sacred intent. This is the art of scribing spells, a ritual weaving magic into the mummy's very form. What did this mystical process involve? Egyptologists describe a deliberate act of spiritual protection. Using reed pens and black ink made from soot, embalmers inscribed linen wrappings with spells from the Book of the Dead, invoking Anubis or Osiris to shield the deceased from underworld perils. For elite mummies, hieroglyphs were occasionally carved into the skin with obsidian tools, a painful honor ensuring eternal safeguarding. These inscriptions, prayers for safe passage or charms against evil, were vital, believed to guide the soul through the afterlife's trials. The process was sacred, blending artistry with divine purpose. But this narrative frays with questions. Why do some mummies, like those studied in 2024 Saqqara scans, bear cryptic symbols not found in known texts? How did embalmers master inks that resisted centuries of decay, suggesting a chemical expertise we can't replicate? The mainstream view, ritualistic spell inscription, leaves gaps, hinting at a knowledge or purpose we haven't fully uncovered. Alternative theories spark intrigue. Scholars propose the spells included lost formulas, perhaps blending herbs into inks for preservation. Fringe ideas go bolder. Could the hieroglyphs have been cosmic codes, aligning the soul with celestial forces? Some even speculate the inscriptions held esoteric knowledge, possibly influenced by otherworldly sources. While these stretch credulity, recent Saqqara discoveries of linen with rare mineral-based inks suggest a craft more advanced than we assumed. Were these spells merely protective, or keys to a deeper mystery? As the embalmer's pens trace their final symbols, the mummy lies wrapped in sacred words, ready for eternity. Were they just inscribing prayers, or encoding secrets to defy time itself? The next enigma of their craft waits, whispering from Egypt's ancient sands. 10. Wrapping the body, a ritual in layers. As twilight cloaks the Nile in shadow, a question haunts the air. Did ancient Egyptian mummy makers wrap bodies in linen to preserve flesh, or to weave a tale that echoes into eternity? In a torchlit workshop, circa 2000 BCE, the scent of cedar resin and fresh linen fills a sandstone chamber. Embalmers, their voices low with chants, drape strip after strip of cloth over a body, each layer a step toward immortality. This is the ritual of wrapping, a meticulous act where every fold holds meaning. What did this layered process entail? Egyptologists reveal a sacred craft. Embalmers used hundreds of yards of linen, often torn from the deceased's own garments, to swaddle the body in tight, precise layers. Between folds, they applied resins like myrrh to seal and protect, while placing amulets, scarabs, eyes of Horus, for spiritual defense. Chants to Osiris accompanied each wrap, invoking blessings for the afterlife, as detailed in the Book of the Dead. This wasn't mere preservation, it was storytelling, each layer a prayer to ensure the soul's safe journey. Yet, this explanation harbors mysteries. Why do some mummies, like those examined in 2024 Saqqara studies, show linen infused with rare preservatives, hinting at chemical knowledge beyond their era? How did embalmers achieve such uniform wrapping, with layers so tight they rival modern techniques? The mainstream view, a ritual of protection, feels incomplete, as if hidden methods or meanings lie beneath the cloth. Alternative theories ignite curiosity. Scholars suggest embalmers used secret resin blends, possibly with antimicrobial herbs, to enhance preservation. Fringe ideas push further. Could the wrapping patterns have mirrored cosmic alignments, encoding celestial maps for the soul? Some even whisper of otherworldly guidance, pointing to the wrap's uncanny precision. While these stretch belief, Saqqara's 2023 finds of linen treated with exotic compounds from distant lands suggest a craft far more sophisticated than we thought. Were these layers just a shroud or a coded narrative? As the embalmers tie the final knot, the mummy lies cocooned, its story sealed in linen. Were they merely wrapping a body or weaving a spell to transcend time itself? Another secret of their craft beckons, buried in Egypt's ancient sands. 11th, embedding amulets between wraps. As the Nile reflects a fading sunset, a question stirs in the twilight. Did ancient Egyptian mummy makers tuck amulets into linen wraps to shield the soul, or to hide secrets meant for eternity? In a flickering workshop, circa 2000 BCE, the air hums with the scent of resin and the soft rustle of linen. Embalmers, their faces solemn, place tiny charms, scarabs, ankhs, eyes of Horus, between layers of cloth, each one a whispered prayer for the afterlife. This is the ritual of embedding amulets, where protection meets mystery. What did this sacred act involve? Egyptologists describe a deliberate process. As embalmers wrapped the body in linen, they strategically placed amulets, often carved from faience, stone, or gold, at key points, over the heart, throat, or abdomen. Each charm, inscribed with spells from the Book of the Dead, invoked deities like Anubis or Thoth to guard against underworld dangers. The scarab, symbolizing rebirth, was a favorite, ensuring the soul's renewal. This ritual, blending artistry and faith, was vital to prepare the deceased for Osiris's judgment. But this narrative leaves shadows. Why do some mummies, like those studied in 2024 Saqqara scans, contain amulets with cryptic symbols not found in standard texts? How did embalmers know precise placements, as if mapping the body's spiritual anatomy? The mainstream view, amulets as protective charms, feels incomplete, hinting at a deeper purpose or lost knowledge. Alternative theories spark wonder. Scholars suggest amulets were infused with rare substances, like resins with antimicrobial properties, aiding preservation. Fringe ideas go further. Could their placements align with cosmic energies, guiding the soul through celestial realms? Some even speculate extraterrestrial influence, pointing to the amulet's intricate designs. While these stretch credulity, recent Saqqara finds of amulets with exotic materials, like lapis lazuli from distant mines, suggest a craft more advanced than we realize. Were these charms mere talismans, or keys to a hidden truth? As the embalmers secure the final amulet, the mummy lies wrapped, its charms glowing with unseen power. Were they just shielding a soul, or embedding a code for eternity? The next enigma of their craft awaits, whispering from Egypt's timeless sands. 12. The final binding and sealing. Did you know that the final stage of mummification, the sealing of the wrappings, was believed to lock the soul into eternity? The firelight flickers low as the desert night falls over ancient Thebes. Inside a dim, torchlit chamber, the air smells of incense and resin. A body lies wrapped in fine linen, silent, still, awaiting the final act. For 70 days, this form has been prepared with precision, devotion, and mystery. Now, at the threshold between life and the afterlife, the embalmers perform the most sacred phase, the binding, the sealing, the moment when flesh meets forever. So what really happened during this final ritual? Historians say the embalmers weren't just preserving bodies, they were transforming them into vessels of eternity. By this point, the organs were removed, the body dried in natron, and wrapped in layer after layer of linen. But it's this last step, the binding and sealing, that truly completed the transformation. Sticky black resin was brushed over the wrappings, hardening like a second skin. Amulets were slipped between the folds, each charged with a specific spell from the Book of the Dead. Then came the mystical words, incantations whispered by priests trained for this precise moment. To modern archaeologists, this all fits the expected pattern. We've even found embalming workshops in Saqqara, with labeled bowls for oils, resins, and natron. Yet, some things still don't add up. Why are some mummies preserved far better than others, even from the same era? Why do some bodies contain traces of chemicals, like imported resins and plant oils, not found anywhere near Egypt? And how did embalmers know that heat-sealed resin would act as both adhesive and microbial barrier, something modern science only recently confirmed? Could they have had access to lost formulas, or even advanced chemistry passed down in guarded oral traditions? Some fringe theorists suggest these sealing rituals were more than symbolic, that they encoded cosmic truths, preserved not just the body, but memory itself. One theory claims the resin, shiny, black, almost glass-like, was intended to mimic the night sky, sealing the soul inside a miniature universe. Others point to carvings and scrolls, suggesting that embalmers followed alignments of stars, believing the wrapping process linked the dead to celestial paths. Of course, mainstream scholars reject alien theories or secret science, but admit, the level of chemical and spiritual complexity here is far greater than we once assumed. So, were ancient Egyptian embalmers just practical artisans or mystic gatekeepers preserving the soul's map to eternity? If the final sealing was just the end of a ritual, why does it still speak to us like a whisper through time? 13th. Coffin carving and decoration. What if the coffin wasn't just a box for the dead, but a coded map for the soul's journey through the afterlife? In the cool silence of a hidden workshop along the Nile, the air hums with chisel strokes, dust swirls in golden shafts of sunlight. Here, while embalmers prepare the body in one chamber, artisans in another are shaping eternity. They carve, paint, and inscribe the coffin, not merely as a container, but as a spellbound vessel, a story meant to be read by the gods. These coffins weren't built after the body was prepared. They were crafted during the mummification process, sometimes even before death. As the body dried in Natron, woodworkers, priests, and painters worked day and night, guided by sacred texts and long-guarded tradition. Each panel told a story: the sky goddess Nut stretching overhead, the weighing of the heart, the voyage through 12 gates of night. Every glyph, every brushstroke had purpose: protective spells from the Book of the Dead, maps of the Duat, the underworld, symbols designed to trick demons and call upon divine forces. The coffin was more than shelter. It was defense, myth, and resurrection, layered in cedar and pigment. According to historians, this process was deeply collaborative. The artisan knew his tools, the scribe knew his spells, the priest knew the star paths, and together, they encoded belief into matter. But something about these coffins still puzzles modern scholars. Why do some coffins, especially in the later periods, contain extremely advanced astronomical charts? Why are certain hieroglyphs stylized in ways that resemble complex mathematical symbols? And how did these artisans, working with no formal engineering system, design such geometrically precise sarcophagi that align with constellations? Some believe the texts were more than myth, that they served as operating manuals for the soul's ascent, programmed instructions etched into wood. Others suggest the pigments used had biochemical properties that could react with oils and resins, forming protective seals not fully understood even today. And then, there are theories even further from the mainstream. Some claim the carvings encode frequencies or vibrational keys meant to activate spiritual dimensions. A few even speculate that the inscriptions are remnants of an ancient science, one that viewed consciousness, geometry, and death as parts of a single cosmic system. Wild theories? Perhaps. But the question remains, how did these ancient craftsmen, with crude tools and limited resources, manage to create coffins that still radiate beauty, mystery, and eerie precision? Maybe they weren't just building for the dead. Maybe they were building a doorway and leaving behind instructions for those brave enough to follow. 14th, tomb inspection and blessings. Did you know that before a mummy was ever sealed behind stone, its tomb underwent a sacred inspection? A ritual so secretive, we're still unsure what all it involved. Picture this: deep in the sands of ancient Thebes, under the shadow of looming cliffs, torches flicker against limestone walls. Hooded priests in leopard skins chant beside hieroglyph-covered sarcophagi, while the air hangs thick with incense and mystery. This wasn't just a burial. It was a cosmic performance. Tonight, we step into the final stage of an Egyptian afterlife journey, the inspection and blessing of the tomb. The core mystery: why did the tomb need to be inspected at all? And by whom? Was this just about ensuring that the architecture matched divine plans? Or did these inspections serve some deeper, hidden purpose? Mainstream Egyptologists describe the tomb blessing as a vital culmination of the burial process. After weeks of embalming and ritual purification, a priest known as the Sem would conduct the opening of the mouth ceremony, a dramatic rite meant to restore the senses of the dead. Meanwhile, scribes, family members, and religious officials inspected every detail of the tomb. Walls etched with spells from the Book of the Dead, amulets precisely placed, offering jars aligned for eternity. Everything had to be perfect. The tomb wasn't just a home, it was a portal. But here's where it gets strange. Some tombs show signs of having been corrected or realigned, walls rebuilt, chamber layouts altered, glyphs overwritten. And we're not just talking royal tombs. Even commoners' burials show evidence of post-construction modifications. So who decided what was wrong? And what standards were they using? How did they determine whether the tomb was spiritually active or sealed off? And how did they know it would work? Recent discoveries in Saqqara and Deir el-Medina have revealed ancient checklists, detailed logs of tomb components, from orientation to pigment quality. But there are still elements science can't fully explain. For example, blessings often referenced celestial alignment, and some tombs appear to match star maps. Could these inspections have involved more than priestly protocol? Perhaps a knowledge of astronomy, vibration, or even sacred acoustics? And what of those mysterious wand artifacts found in burial chambers, ritual tools, or something more? Some fringe theorists even suggest tombs were designed as resurrection chambers, using sound or energy manipulation lost to time. Wild? Maybe. But we know the ancient Egyptians believed that death was not an end, but a transition. Could these inspections and blessings have been their way of fine-tuning the gateway between this world and the next? Were they engineers of eternity, performing final adjustments on a spiritual machine? One thing's clear. These weren't just religious formalities. They were acts of precision, faith, and perhaps hidden science. So the next time you think of a tomb as a dusty old ruin, ask yourself this: what were the ancient embalmers really activating? And is it still humming beneath the desert sands? 15. The procession to the tomb. Why did ancient Egyptians carry their dead in a grand public parade through the desert, complete with weeping mourners, musicians, and sacred bulls? Was it simply ceremony, or something far deeper? As the golden sun rose over the Nile, shimmering on the horizon, a solemn line of figures would wind its way toward the necropolis. In their arms, the body of the deceased, encased in linen and mystery. This was the procession to the tomb, not just a funeral, but a journey through worlds, both seen and unseen. The procession was more than a rite of passage. It was a ritual drama. Every roll, every sound, every step carefully orchestrated. According to Egyptologists, this march was the final earthly voyage of the dead before they entered the eternal afterlife. Family members wailed beside hired professional mourners, echoing the grief of the gods Isis and Nephthys. Priests burned incense and recited spells. Dancers swayed in trance-like motions. Animals sacred to Anubis and Osiris led the way, drawing carts piled with grave goods. And at the center of it all, a lifeless body, soon to become something far more. But why go to such lengths? Why perform this deeply symbolic procession across the hot sands, exposed to both nature and man? Was it about honoring the dead, or transforming them? Here's where the mystery grows. Scholars have uncovered records suggesting that certain moments during the procession had to occur at precise times of day, possibly aligning with solar or star movements. In some cases, the dead were taken along winding desert paths, far longer than necessary, routes that mimicked the journey of the sun, god Ra, through the underworld. Could the procession have doubled as a living ritual, a map of cosmic rebirth? And not all processions were equal. Elite funerals included chants from rare scrolls, masked figures performing esoteric rites, and curious devices, objects some believe were used to awaken the senses of the soul. Fringe theories go further, proposing that the procession wasn't just symbolic, but energetic. That certain routes were chosen for their geomagnetic properties, and that harmonics, through music, steps, and chants, activated something within both the land and the deceased. Speculative? Absolutely. But remember, the ancient Egyptians viewed death as a second birth, and every phase of burial reflected that belief. The procession wasn't just a goodbye. It was a crossing. A ceremony meant to prepare the body, the soul, and even the landscape for transition. So, next time you imagine the silent desert, picture this: a moving sea of white linen, tears, and sacred symbols threading its way to the tomb. Was it just a funeral? Or was it a forgotten technology of transcendence? 16. The opening of the mouth ritual. Could a ritual actually bring the dead back to life, at least in the eyes of the gods? In ancient Egypt, one ceremony claimed to do just that. It was called the opening of the mouth, a mysterious rite performed in the final hours before sealing the tomb. And according to their beliefs, without it, the soul of the deceased could not speak, eat, see, or survive eternity. Picture this: a twilight ceremony on the edge of the desert. The body lies still, wrapped in linen, surrounded by priests in panther skins and carved gold amulets. Torches flicker, incense curls through the air. The Sem priest steps forward, holding a strange tool, part adze, part wand, crafted from meteoric iron or desert stone. With slow, deliberate motion, he touches the tool to the lips, eyes, and ears of the deceased. Chants rise like wind through temple columns. In this moment, something sacred is happening. They aren't just blessing a corpse. They're reactivating a soul. Mainstream Egyptology tells us the opening of the mouth was essential. It symbolically restored the senses so the deceased could function in the afterlife, speak spells, eat offerings, defend themselves in judgment. The ritual mimicked acts of the gods, Osiris's mouth being opened by Horus, returning him to divine awareness. We even have detailed inscriptions showing the steps: purification, mouth-touching, offering the heart, and declaring the body true of voice. But here's what puzzles researchers. The level of theatricality, the specific instruments, and even the astronomical timing of some of these rites suggest something more complex than just symbolic magic. For instance, why were certain materials like meteoric iron used exclusively in this ritual? Why were some versions performed multiple times, before, during, and after burial? And in some tombs, the adze tools were found carefully placed near the skull, as if the ritual had more than metaphorical significance. Some scholars speculate this was Egypt's version of spiritual resurrection, a moment when the deceased truly woke up in the realm beyond. Fringe theories push further. Could the ritual have stimulated consciousness somehow, through sound resonance, mineral frequency, or even forgotten techniques of breath and vibration? Did the ancient Egyptians possess esoteric knowledge about life energy that we've long dismissed? We may never know the full truth. But one thing is certain: this wasn't just theater. To the ancient embalmers, it was sacred science, a final, crucial activation of the body as vessel of the soul. So ask yourself, when the Sem priest whispered words and touched iron to flesh, was he honoring the dead or reigniting something eternal? 17. Training the next generation. How do you pass down secrets meant to last an eternity? In ancient Egypt, the embalmers held knowledge that bordered on the divine, preserving bodies for thousands of years, navigating rituals tied to the stars and the afterlife. But who trained these specialists? And how did the next generation learn the sacred art of defeating death? Step into the back streets of ancient Memphis or Thebes, behind high walls and temple corridors, far from public view. Boys born into embalmer families watched and listened. The scent of natron hung in the air. Whispered chants drifted from darkened chambers. Tools of the trade, bronze hooks, resin jars, papyrus scrolls, lay in careful rows. Training didn't start in a classroom. It began in silence, shadow, and strict secrecy. Historians believe that mummification knowledge was passed orally, father to son, master to apprentice. The stakes were high. Perform the rituals wrong, and the soul could be lost forever. That's why only a select few were ever allowed to learn. Inscriptions from Deir el-Medina suggest embalmers were part of tight-knit guilds, with access to specialized workshops like those recently discovered at Saqqara. There, in subterranean embalming rooms, priests not only prepared the dead, they taught the living. But even with what we've uncovered, gaps remain. How did young embalmers learn to mix resins that resisted decay for thousands of years, using ingredients from distant lands? How were they taught to recite complex funerary texts, often without error, in fading candlelight? Some suggest initiates were led through staged burials and secret rituals, rites of passage that bound them to their roles, spiritually and socially. And here's where it turns truly mysterious. In some tombs, we've found symbolic tools placed not near the body, but in hidden niches, alongside figurines of youthful scribes. Could these be tributes to apprentices? Or messages left by the trained for those yet to be trained? Some fringe theorists speculate that embalmer knowledge wasn't merely practical, but encoded in ritual, geometry, even sound. Was training a mystical transformation as much as an education? Mainstream or not, one thing's clear. These weren't just undertakers. They were stewards of cosmic law. Their teachings were built not on technique alone, but belief that through precise action, a human soul could live forever. So, as the apprentice watched the master anoint the dead, he wasn't just learning to wrap a body. He was learning to unlock the doorway to eternity. And we're left wondering, did they train to preserve the dead? Or to preserve something even deeper? Knowledge itself, 18. Dealing with mistakes or omens. What happened when something went wrong during the sacred process of mummification? A dropped organ, a broken tool, a sudden sandstorm or unexplained noise. In ancient Egypt, these weren't seen as accidents, they were omens. And for embalmers, they could mean disaster, not just for the dead, but for the living. Imagine it. The body lies open under torchlight, surrounded by jars, incense, and prayers. A young embalmer makes a wrong incision. The priest pauses. Everyone goes silent. This isn't just a mistake, it's a breach in cosmic order, because mummification wasn't surgery, it was a divine act, and failure could curse the soul, or summon judgment from the gods. Egyptologists have found references in ancient texts, papyrus scrolls and tomb wall inscriptions, describing ritual reversals. These were emergency protocols used when something went awry. If the wrong amulet was used, it had to be removed and re-blessed. If a tool was dropped, it might be buried or cleansed in natron. In some rare cases, parts of the ritual were restarted entirely. This wasn't just superstition, it was spiritual troubleshooting. But the deeper mystery is why these actions were taken so seriously. Mainstream scholars suggest embalmers believed they were mirroring the death and resurrection of Osiris. Any deviation could throw off that divine blueprint. And so, even the smallest misstep, blood spilled outside the sacred circle, the wrong word chanted, was treated as a tear in the ritual fabric. In workshop ruins at Saqqara, archaeologists recently uncovered what may have been error pits, small, sealed holes containing broken embalming tools, charred wrappings, and animal bones. Were these items discarded because they were flawed, or because they were contaminated by spiritual failure? And what of the omens? Unexplained noises during embalming were sometimes recorded as warnings. If a jackal howled or a flame sputtered at the wrong moment, rituals were paused. Some fringe theories even suggest embalmers may have interpreted these signs as communications, guidance from the beyond, or interference from dark forces. Wild? Maybe. But in a culture where life, death, and divinity were tightly woven, mistakes weren't just technical, they were cosmic. And the embalmers? They weren't just craftsmen, they were guardians of the veil. So next time you think of an embalmer as a stoic figure working in silence, consider this. He may have been locked in battle with fate itself, praying every move was pure, every sign favorable. Because in ancient Egypt, one wrong move didn't just doom the dead, it risked unraveling eternity. 19th, restocking sacred supplies. What did ancient Egyptian embalmers do when they ran low on sacred oils or ritual linens? Did they simply head to the market? Or did restocking mean something far more sacred, secretive, and dangerous? In the shadows of temple walls and beside the Nile's sacred flow, the life of a mummy maker was built not just on ritual, but on preparation. The ingredients they used, cedar oil, natron, myrrh, sacred resins from the Levant, rare herbs from Nubia, weren't just items. They were divine components. Every drop and thread had to be ritually pure, sourced from the right place, and prepared in just the right way. So when the jars ran dry or the linen rolls dwindled, restocking wasn't just logistical. It was a holy act. According to mainstream Egyptology, temple complexes and embalming workshops like those recently excavated in Saqqara operated with meticulous storage systems. Supply rooms held dozens of amphorae labeled in hieratic script, oil of cedar, resin of incense, unguents for transformation. But acquiring new stock meant more than procurement. Ingredients had to be blessed by priests, often before transport. In some cases, specific components were only harvested on astrologically significant days when planetary alignments favored preservation and rebirth. This wasn't just supply chain management, it was cosmic choreography. And when those ingredients weren't available, that's when things got mysterious. Some funerary papyri mention substitute rites, secondary recipes and replacement oils used only in times of scarcity. But the exact mixtures were closely guarded. So how did embalmers know what could substitute what? Were these formulas memorized and passed down, or rediscovered each time through ritual revelation? Fringe theorists suggest an even stranger possibility. Could some embalmers have experimented, tinkering with alchemical knowledge lost to time? After all, certain mummies have been found with resins that seem chemically advanced, even antimicrobial. Could embalmers have held secrets we've only recently begun to understand? And what of the stories, rare but recurring, of embalmers venturing into tombs not to rob, but to reclaim, to harvest sacred oils or linens from the long dead when the living supply failed? It sounds dark, but in a belief system where purity mattered more than time, and ritual trumped possession, the idea isn't so far-fetched. So the next time you imagine an embalmer mixing oil by candlelight, ask yourself, was he simply refilling his stock, or reaching back through the ages, reviving ancient recipes born in temples, traded by caravans, whispered by priests? Because in the land of the pharaohs, even restocking was a sacred ritual. 20. Nightfall offerings and prayers. As the sun dipped beneath the desert horizon and shadows stretched long across the sands, ancient Egyptian embalmers did not rest. In fact, some of their most sacred work began at night. Offerings were placed, prayers were whispered, fires were lit, not to warm, but to illuminate the passage between worlds. This was the realm of nightfall offerings and prayers, when the living spoke to the dead. And perhaps something whispered back. Why were nighttime rituals so vital in the embalming process? According to Egyptologists, the night symbolized the soul's journey through Duat, the shadowy underworld. Just as the sun god Ra sailed through 12 perilous hours of darkness to rise again at dawn, the deceased too had to pass unseen trials. And so, embalmers, guardians of this transformation, prepared the body not just with linen and oil, but with nightfall rites designed to empower the soul. At sunset, the embalming chamber transformed. Torches flickered against stone walls. Incense burned, copal, myrrh, kaifi, filling the air with sacred smoke. Offerings of bread, beer, figs, and lotus flowers were set beside the body. But this wasn't sustenance. It was symbolic fuel for the Ka, the life force of the dead. Priests recited passages from the Book of the Dead, their voices low and rhythmic, designed to resonate with the other side. Some texts describe specific prayers that could only be said after nightfall, invocations to guide the Bia, the soul bird, safely through the darkness. Certain spells were believed to illuminate the spirit world, protecting the deceased from demons, serpents, and gates that demanded secret names to open. But here's where mystery creeps in. In several tombs across Luxor and Saqqara, archaeologists have found blackened offering bowls, charred and cracked, as if burned through intense ritual. Some believe these weren't ordinary offerings, but part of fire rites, hidden ceremonies to awaken or transform the dead during key hours of the night. Why were they kept secret? Were these midnight rites only performed for high elites, or in response to omens? And fringe theorists offer even stranger possibilities, that these nighttime rituals tapped into astral alignments or altered states of consciousness through incense and chant. Could the embalmers have believed they were literally opening a gateway, brief, precise, and only visible in darkness? We may never fully decode the purpose of these offerings and midnight prayers. But one thing is certain. To the ancient Egyptians, night was not an end. It was a passage, a mirror to eternity. So as stars rose over the necropolis and priests raised their hands to the heavens, they weren't just honoring the dead. They were lighting a path for the soul, through the dark, toward forever.